3 ales. Suddenly, it was a moral crisis. Authorities saw public drunkenness as dangerous, not because of the alcohol itself, but because it made people unpredictable. Slurred speech and stumbling were fine behind closed doors, but out in the streets, that's how revolts start. Or worse, folk songs. Some towns even had ale tasters, whose job was to make sure tavern beer wasn't too strong, or at least not stronger than the mayor's tolerance. Still, being drunk in public was rarely treated as a crime. It was a mild disgrace, a social slap on the wrist. You weren't a criminal, just someone who got a little too medieval on a Wednesday night. And after a few hours in the stocks, you walked away stiff, shamed, and probably planning your next visit to the tavern. Just quieter this time. Hangovers in the Middle Ages were exactly as awful as you'd expect, minus the ibuprofen and minus any sympathy from your neighbours. You wake up on a pile of straw, the church bells are going off like Judgment Day, and there's a goat staring at you because apparently you passed out in its stall. Again. So what did medieval people do for hangovers? Well, for starters, they powered through it. You had chores. You had obligations. You didn't have time to complain about your head splitting open like a rotting melon. You just muttered something about sin and staggered back into the daylight. But some people, bless them, did try actual cures. One popular one? Raw eggs in ale, because nothing says recovery like mixing what wrecked you with what might give you salmonella. Others swore by vinegar, or fennel tea, or infused herbs, which usually tasted like grass and sadness. If you were lucky enough to have access to a doctor, and I use that term loosely, they'd talk about imbalanced humours, and probably bleed you a little. Nothing helps a hangover like blood loss, right? Some just kept drinking. That's not a joke. Hair of the dog wasn't invented yesterday. Medieval folks figured, well, I already feel like death, might as well top it off with a warm mug of redemption. The church, predictably, had a different take. Hangovers weren't just your body punishing you, they were God punishing you. The prescription was repentance, and maybe fasting. Nothing cures a headache like guilt and a dry crust of bread. Honestly, most people probably didn't call it a hangover. They just called it Thursday. But make no mistake, getting wasted in medieval times had consequences. The difference is, you couldn't tweet about it. You just got up, wiped the ale crust off your face, and hoped nobody remembered what you did with that loot.